Imagine the chill of pre-dawn fog clinging to your skin like a shroud of unspoken sins. A widow, pale as death, steps naked into icy creek waters, surrounded by three silent men bound by chains and blood. What divine curse compelled her to bathe in their essence, washing away a family's darkest secret, one whisper of betrayal, and souls would shatter forever? In the shadowed heart of Burke County, Georgia, where the Savannah River whispers ancient curses through the cotton fields, a veil of silence descended like a biblical plague upon Willowben Plantation. It was the year 1839, a time when the antebellum South cloaked its savagery in lace and ledger books. But beneath the magnolia blossoms lurked a rot that no prayer could cleanse. 17 souls vanished into the earth between the thawing of March 1838 and the harvest moons of September 1839. Men, women, and shadows in between. Each death a ghost note in a symphony of denial. No coroner's ink dared name the truth. Physicians' ledgers turned to ash in midnight fires, and the county's archives bore scars where pages were ripped away like confessions from a sinner's tongue. When the lawmen from Savannah finally rode in under October's blood-red skies, they found not a town, but a congregation of the damned, neighbors, kin, and servants alike, their lips sealed by a fear deeper than hell's abyss. What abomination awaited them in the root-cellar's earthen womb would shatter the illusions of southern gentility, exposing a woman's descent into a ritual of flesh and spirit that mocked God's order and invited divine wrath upon generations unborn. This is the tale of Cordelia Vance Rutled, a name that still echoes like a serpent's hiss through the pine barrens of Georgia. But before we plunge into the creek's cold embrace, where redemption drowned in forbidden waters, pause and reflect. In a world where men owned souls like chattel, what greater sin than to twist bloodlines into chains of eternal damnation? If these shadows stir your spirit, subscribe to our channel, Liturgy of Fear, and share in the comments the haunted corners of your own world, the places where history's ghosts refuse to rest. Your voice awakens the forgotten, and together, we unearth the truths that time tried to bury. The genesis of this unholy saga traces back to a death that masqueraded as mercy in an era when the reaper's scythe swung freely among the elite. Burke County sprawled like a verdant kingdom along the Savannah's fertile veins, its soil so rich that cotton burst forth in white waves, measuring fortunes not in gold, but in the sweat-stained bales that sailed to distant empires. By 1838, this land of plenty had crowned itself one of Georgia's jewels, with over 60 grand estates fueling the looms of England and the coffers of the South. Waynesboro, the county seat, pulsed with 3,000 lives, a mosaic of steeples and social strata, where episcopal spires pierced the heavens and class lines were etched in marble and iron. Here, faith and finance intertwined, sermons on Sunday mornings giving way to slave auctions by afternoon, all under the watchful eyes of God and gossip. 7 miles southeast, where Turkey Creek carved lazy serpents through the bottomlands, stood Willowben Plantation, a 1,400-acre dominion of order and oppression. The manor house loomed like a sentinel, 3 stories of federal elegance with columns as pristine as a preacher's collar, their white gleams stark against crimson brick walls that seemed to bleed in the sunset. 42 enslaved bodies toiled in the endless rows of cotton, their backs bent under the sun's merciless gaze, while 18 more danced the invisible threads of domestic servitude in the stables, kitchens, and shadowed halls. The Rutled lineage had claimed this earth since 1792, a dynasty of English bloodlines who flaunted their heritage like holy relics, their manners polished to a sheen that hid the rust of moral decay. Into this realm stepped Cordelia Vance in 1820, a bride of 19 summers, wed to Thomas Rutled, a man twice her age, already widowed and weathered by the plantation's relentless grind. She hailed from Charleston's fading aristocracy, daughter of a merchant whose ships had withered under embargoes, leaving fortunes as fragile as sea foam. Their union was no romance of the heart, but a covenant of convenience. Thomas craved a steward for his hearth and heirs for his legacy, while Cordelia's kin sought the anchor of agrarian wealth. She towered among women of her day, 5 feet 8 inches of ethereal grace, with raven hair that cascaded like midnight rivers and eyes of storm cloud gray. Eyes that servants swore could pierce souls, discerning secrets buried deeper than roots. Across 18 years of matrimony, Cordelia gifted Thomas 5 offspring, each birth a testament to duty amid the plantation's cyclic torments. Margaret arrived in 1821, a delicate bloom in spring's embrace. Thomas Jr. followed in 1823, sturdy as the oaks that guarded the drive. Catherine in 1825, with eyes mirroring her mother's piercing stare. Edmund in 1828, boisterous and bold. And Elizabeth in 1831, the final whisper of fertility before silence fell upon their chambers. The Rutleds reigned supreme in Burke's gilded circles. Thomas a commissioner with fingers in the Waynesboro Bank's vaults. Cordelia the hostess of feasts where French delicacies mingled with Southern drawls. Neighbors whispered of her chill demeanor, efficient as a clockwork reaper. Yet those intimate with Willowben sensed an undercurrent, a spiritual unrest that hummed like distant thunder. Cordelia's private world unfolded in leather-bound tomes, pinned by flickering candlelight when a house slumbered. These journals, later unearthed and scorched in purges of panic, brimmed with arcane musings, dissections of anatomy from Philadelphia's grimoires, treatises on heredity that blurred the lines between science and sorcery. Unbecoming for a lady schooled in embroidery and etudes, her readings veered into the forbidden. Alchemical texts on blood's essence, biblical exegeses on generational curses, the sins of fathers visited upon sons. She prowled the dawnlit fields, her silhouette a specter among the laborers, probing with questions that chilled the air, queries on lineages, ailments, the invisible threads binding body to spirit. Was it curiosity or a darker divination, seeking signs of divine judgment in the sweat of the oppressed? Thomas Rutled embodied the planter archetype, authoritative yet not overtly tyrannical, his days consumed by yields and yields alone. Evenings found him on the veranda, whiskey glass in hand, cigar smoke curling like incense to indifferent gods, debating tariffs and secession with kin. Sundays, he led his brood to Waynesboro's Presbyterian sanctuary, claiming the ancestral pew where piety masked private pains. But fissures cracked this facade. After Elizabeth's birth in 1831, separate bedrooms became their norm, Thomas citing Cordelia's nocturnal scribblings as disturbances to his rest, though whispers hinted at deeper rifts, perhaps a cooling of passions or unspoken revulsions. His bowels betrayed him recurrently, a gnawing affliction treated by Dr. Silas Pemberton with calomel purges and laudanum dreams. Through 1837, the pains sharpened, yet examinations revealed no mortal coil undone, just the wear of whiskey and worry. Among Willowben's enslaved, 3 men rose like anomalies in a field of uniformity. Isaiah Drummond, Caleb Tucker, and Josiah Mercer, pillars of skill in a sea of subjugation. Isaiah, 32 and forged in Virginia's workshops, commanded the carpentry realm, his hands crafting beams and barns with the precision of a divine architect. Literate by the grace of Thomas's father, he deciphered blueprints and bartered supplies, a rare autonomy that bred envy and isolation. Caleb, 28, hammered fate in a blacksmith's forge, his 6-foot frame a colossus of muscle purchased from Carolina's ruins in 1829. His cabin stood apart, a solitary forge where sparks danced like fallen stars, his silence a shield against the world's cruelties. Josiah, 26 and Willowben born, served as Thomas's shadow, valet driver, overseer of sorts, nurtured under Ruth's care until consumption claimed her in 1824. Thomas's peculiar patronage gifted him letters and numbers, elevating him to a limbo between chains and choice. These 3 shared ethereal marks, stature towering, skin lighter than the field's deep hues, skills that spared them the whip's rhythm. Privileges trickled, coins from hired laborers, cabins with hearths, but beneath, a shared enigma. Crescent birthmarks on left shoulders, like lunar scars from a forgotten fall. Not yet significant, these sigils whispered of blood's betrayal, a spiritual inheritance coiled in silence. Willowben's cadence mirrored the South's merciless metronome. March's seeds sown in bloodied furrows, September's bowls blooming white as judgment robes, harvests reaping souls till November's chill. Dawn cracked whips before light, fields echoing with chants, and chains till dusk's mercy. Cordelia orchestrated the inner sanctum with surgical zeal. Inventories of linens like litanies, oversight of kitchens where aromas of ham and herbs masked the underbelly of exploitation. Thomas roamed on horseback, ledgers his Bible, journeys to Waynesboro his pilgrimages. Suppers in the dining hall enforced decorum, silverware clinking like shackles, conversations pruned of controversy. Yet, in the undergrowth of this normality, a spiritual malignancy festered. Cordelia's diaries from 1836 to 1837, fragments salvaged from flames, obsessed with the eternal echo of blood, traits persisting like biblical curses, Cain's mark, Ham's shame. Secret missives from Charleston arrived in unmarked seals, perhaps from occult scholars or fallen kin. Augusta apothecaries supplied her arsenal. Mercury's gleam, arsenic's whisper, hydrotherapy contraptions evoking baptismal tortures. Was this medicine, or a profane alchemy, blending science with sin to defy divine decree? The winter of 1837 to 1838 descended like God's wrath upon the lowlands. Frosts biting deeper than serpent's fangs, the savanna's edges crystallizing in unnatural ice. Cabins became tombs of shivering flesh, enslaved families clinging to embers like prayers unanswered. In the manor, hearths blazed eternally, wool layers shrouding forms against the chill's invasion. Thomas withered visibly, cramps twisting his innards like thorns in Christ's side, weight melting to reveal a skeletal saint. Dr. Pemberton's weekly vigils yielded futile elixirs. Cordelia assumed the healer's mantle, brewing broths and tonics in cauldrons that steamed with herbal mysteries, feeding him with hands steady as fate. Dawn of March 3rd, 1838, etched eternity. Josiah entered Thomas's chamber to find the master cold, eyes staring into voids unseen. 52 years extinguished, declared by Pemberton as gastric fever's fatal embrace, a commonplace shroud for the unexplained. Cordelia met the verdict with stoic grace. No wails, no tears, but a mechanical orchestration. Burial attire selected with care, notices penned in elegant script, the house swathed in mourning's black veils. 3 days later, under leaden skies, Thomas joined ancestors in the iron-fenced necropolis, Reverend Nathaniel Knox intoning psalms of rest amid Burke's elite. Cordelia, veiled in silk shadows, stood as a pillar of salt, unmoved, yet inwardly churning with secrets that could summon brimstone. Unbeknownst, in death's immediate hush, Cordelia descended to the root cellar's damp crypt, amid tubers and preserves, retrieving a chest bound in iron. Letters, receipts, ebony journal pulsing with forbidden lore. By lantern's flicker, she perused, face a mask of marble, then concealed it anew under bedroom planks, a Pandora's relic guarding familial Armageddon. Post-funeral dawn summoned the trio, Isaiah, Caleb, Josiah, to Thomas's study, Cordelia enthroned behind mahogany like a queen of the underworld. New edicts fell, duties of discretion, obedience absolute. A European savant's hydrotherapy, she claimed, to safeguard her vitality for Willowben's helm. Assistance mandatory, refusal a one-way passage to Louisiana's cane hell, where spirits broke in 5 years' torment. Her gaze, gray as judgment clouds, pierced each, invoking names with intimate venom. Hints of paternal shadows, blood's tainted rivers. No choice in bondage's grip. They bowed to the inevitable. The stage, Turkey Creek's sinuous path, 20 feet of crystal vein through southern acres. Spring chilled, even in July's blaze. Cypresses knelt at banks, roots forming thrones and stairs to liquid limbo. Laundry days aside, it slumbered in seclusion, oaks and brambles veiling it from prying eyes. A Eden inverted, ripe for transgression. March 7th, 1838, 4 days post-interment. Cordelia approached at Aurora's blush, gray gown unadorned, linen bundle clutched like sacred relics. The men trailed, spectral and separate, fog weaving shrouds around their forms. Air thick with earth's damp breath, leaves decay, avian laments piercing the veil between worlds. A hound's distant bay echoed, like Cerberus's call. The creek's mirror surface reflected a limbo untouched by time's march. At a bend's flat rock altar, she halted, bundle laid, as offering. Facing the trio on the bank, her tone pragmatic as a butcher's blade. Disrobe, enter waist-deep from a circle in silence. Threats reiterated, betrayal's price, eternal exile, but laced with esoteric knowing, blood's call echoing biblical bonds. Isaiah waited first, resolve ironclad, eyes horizon-bound. Caleb's bulk followed, tension coiling like springs. Josiah lagged, gate a gallows march, soul already forfeit. Cordelia shed her garb unashamed, body luminous in dawn's pallor. Stretch-marked canvas of maternity's past. Into the current's bite she stepped, unflinching, centering the triad facing outward. From the bundle emerged artifacts, razor gleaming like sin's edge, vials of translucent elixirs, cloths pristine as shrouds, a tome leather-clad as forbidden fruit. Pages parted to incantations in tongues arcane, Latin's bastard kin, voice resonant, weaving spells of dominion. Ablutions commenced, creek water scooped in patterns ritualistic, shoulders cleansed of worldly taint, chests purged of hidden guilts, arms, backs, legs anointed with herbal fire that stung like conscience's whip. Phrases murmured, rhythmic as psalms twisted. Men rigid as idols, gazes averted to foliage, firmament, anywhere but the profane tableau. Self-purification mirrored, movements a dance of deliberate defiance. Then the blade, incisions precise over crescent scars, blood welling like sacrificial wine. Cloths captured crimson essence, mingled with vile mysteries applied to her form. Chest and womb rubbed with this unholy chrism, invocations rising like smoke from altars profane. 30 minutes of eternity elapsed, commands to clothe, resume mundanities, return at Moro's call. She departed without glance, bundle reclaimed, steps purposeful toward the manor. The men lingered, creeks chill seeping into spirits, a void where innocence once dwelled. Heaviness pressed chests like stones of judgment, minds fogged with dread's delirium. Wordless parting, but bonds forged in blood's alchemy. Something extracted, a demonic residue implanted. Thus commenced the daily sacrament. Each dawn's immersion, nudity's vulnerability, washing's repetition, bleeding's rhythm. A cycle of spiritual theft, where Cordelia's quest for preservation blurred into damnation's embrace, inviting divine retribution upon Willowben's cursed soil. What ancestral sin birthed this madness? What redemption could cleanse such waters? The creek knew, but whispered only to the winds. As weeks bled into months, the plantation's facade cracked subtly. Whispers among the enslaved painted Cordelia as a witch of old, her gray eyes portals to perdition. The men's demeanors shifted. Isaiah's hammers fell with hollow echoes. Caleb's forge sparks dimmed. Josiah's gaze wandered to horizons unseen. Health waned not in body alone, but soul. Dreams haunted by crescent moons bleeding, voices chanting in forgotten tongues. Cordelia's journals swelled with triumph's notes. Observations on vitality's surge. Blood's potency as elixir against time's decay. Biblical parallels drawn. Rachel's mandrakes for fertility. Esau's birthright bartered. The mark of Cain as protection and curse. Was this hydrotherapy, or a perversion of baptism, washing sins onto other shoulders? Correspondence with Charleston's phantom deepened, parcels arriving with compounds that shimmered like forbidden manna. Spring's planting unfolded under omens. Cotton seeds sown in soil that seemed to thirst for more than rain. Birds circled the creek unnaturally, their cries lamentations. Neighbors noted Cordelia's renewed vigor, skin luminous, step spry, attributing it to widow's resolve, blind to the spiritual vampirism at play. Yet divine eyes watched. Thunderstorms ravaged fields unnaturally, lightning scarring oaks like God's finger-pointing accusation. Enslaved children spoke of shadows in the creek, forms twisting beneath surfaces. The men's birthmarks throbbed post-ritual, scars reopening as if rejecting the blade's kiss. By summer's swelter, the trio's burdens manifested. Isaiah's hands trembled on tools, crafting flaws like moral cracks. Caleb's strength ebbed, anvil strikes weak as faith faltering. Josiah whispered prayers in solitude, seeking absolution from a God who seemed deaf. Cordelia, empowered, managed Willowben with prophetic zeal, yields bountiful, yet tainted. Dinners hosted evoked Last Suppers. Guests uneasy under her gaze that dissected souls. Children sensed the shift. Margaret's nightmares of drowning mothers, Thomas Jr.'s avoidance of creekside paths. The root cellar's chest grew heavier with evidence. Cloths stained crimson, vials emptied, journal entries veering into madness. The blood redeems, as Christ did, but mine shall not spill vainly. In their veins flows the Rutled curse, and I harvest its antidote. What paternal secrets bound these men? Whispers hinted at Thomas's indiscretions, liaisons with enslaved women, offspring hidden in plain sight. The crescents, marks of Rutled lineage, bastard badges. Cordelia's ritual, not mere madness, but calculated expungement, draining impure blood to purify her dynasty, a eugenic heresy cloaked in spirituality. As harvest neared, the creek's waters ran redder in dreams, foreshadowing the 17 deaths to come. Divine justice stirred, retribution's storm brewing. For in twisting creation's order, Cordelia invited apocalypse upon her house, a southern Gothic parable of sin's inescapable legacy. In the suffocating embrace of Burke County spring, where the air hung heavy with the scent of blooming cotton and unspoken maledictions, the dawn rituals at Turkey Creek evolved into a profane liturgy that mocked the sanctity of creation. Cordelia Rutled, now unchained from widowhood's veil, varied her sacraments with alchemical precision, alternating elixirs that burned like hellfire on skin, shifting incisions to veins pulsing with reluctant life, intoning verses from her shadowed tome that twisted Latin into curses. Yet the core remained an abomination. The pre-light hour when night clung stubbornly to the world, the creek's frigid bite piercing flesh like divine rebuke, the enforced nudity stripping souls bare, the methodical ablutions washing away more than dirt, eroding the essence of man, and the bloodletting, where crimson drops mingled with murmurs of power, binding victim to violator in a covenant of corruption. This was no mere bath. It was a spiritual vampirism, a perversion of baptism where redemption flowed backward, from the oppressed to the oppressor, inviting the wrath of a jealous God upon Willowben's tainted soil. Within 14 days, the plantation's rhythms fractured under the weight of transformation. Isaiah Drummond, Caleb Tucker, and Josiah Mercer, once beacons of resilience amid the chains, their skills of fragile armor against subjugation, now wandered as specters in living form. Tasks that once flowed from their hands with artisan grace now stumbled through fogged minds. Hammers fell without purpose. Forges cooled prematurely. Instructions evaporated like morning dew. Their eyes, once sharp with survival's cunning, dulled to glassy voids, reflecting not the world but an inner abyss where vitality seeped away. Conversations withered to monosyllabic echoes, flat as beaten earth, devoid of the spark that once ignited camaraderie in the quarter's shadowed nights. Rachel, a house servant etched with the lines of 40 harvests, who had cradled Josiah in infancy when his mother's consumption claimed her, bore witness to this slow unraveling. In hushed testimony years later, she described it as watching a soul evaporate from its vessel, like steam rising from a quenched fire, leaving only ash. Josiah's frame, once lithe and purposeful, now shuffled with the hesitance of the damned. His gaze passed through her as if she were a ghost from a forgotten life. "What ails you, child?" she'd whisper in the kitchen's dim glow, her voice laced with maternal dread. He'd pause, head tilting like a marionette with severed strings, then turn away, silence heavier than any chain. The enslaved community, bound by shared suffering, felt the chill spread like frost on window panes. Nightly murmurs in the cabins wove tales of conjure and curse. Mistress Cordelia, they said, had bartered with shadows from New Orleans voodoo veils, or perhaps deeper, from Africa's ancestral spirits twisted by the Middle Passage. Poison, they speculated, dripped into meals or mines. Hexes rooted in graveyard dirt, stealing wills and wasting bodies. But fear's sealed lips. To accuse was to invite the whip or worse, for in this land, black lives were expendable offerings to white whims. Up in the manor's polished halls, where crystal chandeliers mocked the cabin's dirt floors, Cordelia's progeny sensed the spiritual schism. Her absences carved voids in the pre-dawn quiet. She'd slip away regardless of rain's lash or fog's shroud, returning with damp tresses curling like serpents, retreating to her chamber to shed sodden garments. Young Edmund, 10 years of curiosity unbridled, once cornered her in the breakfast parlor, his voice piping with innocence. "Mama, where do you vanish to before the cock crows?" Her response, smooth as poison honey, "Merely constitutionals by the creek, my boy, for health's sake. The mists are perilous for tender lungs like yours. Stay abed." But Margaret, 17 and blooming into womanhood's perceptiveness, harbored deeper suspicions. Her mother's eyes burned with an unnatural fervor, a luminosity that spoke of forbidden fires kindled within. The black leather book, once occasional, now clung to Cordelia like a talisman, tucked under pillow at night, clutched during days as if warding off divine scrutiny. Weight melted from Cordelia's frame despite hearty suppers, her movements infused with a manic vitality that belied grief's toll. One April morn, as dogwoods wept petals like tears unshed, Margaret donned cloak and resolve, trailing her mother's silhouette into the oak grove's embrace. The air thrummed with unseen warnings, branches whispering judgments, leaves rustling like pages of condemnation. But Cordelia, ever vigilant as a biblical watchman, lurked in the shadows, her grip seizing Margaret's wrist with bruising force. "Foolish girl," she hissed, voice a blade wrapped in silk, eyes blazing with infernal light. "Pursue this path again, breathe a word to soul living or dead, and I'll chain you here eternally. No suitor, no escape, no spark of joy. Willowben will be your tomb." Terror clawed at Margaret's throat. She fled, heart pounding psalms of fear, the encounter searing her spirit like brimstone. That eve, in her wardrobe's secret nook, Margaret confided to her diary, a modest leather sentinel against madness. Ink flowed in tremulous strokes. Mother's transfigured, a stranger wearing her skin. An aura of wrongness clings, foul as sulfur from the pit. Whatever transpires at the creek reeks of evil, beyond Sunday sermon's devils, a tangible darkness devouring light. Whom to tell? Father slumbers eternal. Reverend Knox would deem me hysterical. I watch, I wait, praying for revelation before damnation claims us all. Her vigil intensified, noting the acrid chemical tang on Cordelia's hems, like alchemical brews from forbidden labs. Observing stares fixed on the trio, dissecting them as a vivisector might lab rats, spying the iron-bound chest materialized post-Thomas's demise, its locks guarding secrets that could summon apocalypse. Amid this domestic inferno, spring's labors demanded obeisance. Fields awoke under plow's bite, seeds sown in furrows that mirrored the plantation's scarred souls. Cordelia orchestrated with quartermaster zeal, conferring with overseer, poring over ledgers under candles flicker, ensuring every whip crack yielded profit. To Burke's peering eyes, she epitomized the stoic widow, guardian of legacy till Thomas Jr. claimed his throne. Yet solitary nights unveiled the truth. Journals burgeoned with clinical cruelties, chronicles of the men's decay, pulses weakening like faith in crisis, responses sluggish as sinners' repentance, physiques crumbling under invisible sieges. Dosages detailed, frequencies calibrated, references to Dr. H., a phantom correspondent whose missives fueled her frenzy. Self-reflections glowed with hubris, vitality surging like manna, ailments banished, attributing it to the transfusions that echoed biblical life-for-life exchanges. Cryptic barbs at Thomas, lies unearthed in death's soil, betrayals of bed and blood, inheritances tainted. I purify as God cleansed the flood's remnants. Handwriting devolved into slashes, violent as the cuts she inflicted, mirroring a mind teetering on madness's precipice. If these revelations stir dread in your core, kindred spirit, summon a companion to share this veil-piercing tale. Bestow alike upon our chronicle, subscribe to Liturgy of Fear, and journey with us into Willowben's deepening nightmare, where sins of the fathers begot a mother's unholy reckoning. By May's sweltering ascent, the trio's affliction screamed undeniable. Weights sloughed off like discarded husks, movements lurching as if puppeteered by demons unsteady. Isaiah, architect of wonders from mere wood, fumbled basics, needing scrawled guides for nails and boards. Caleb's iron bent crooked, precision lost to tremors. Josiah's memory frayed, commands dissolving mid-task. Dr. Silas Pemberton, summoned for Elizabeth's lingering cough, stumbled upon this tableau of torment. 63, Augustus schooled, his practice a patchwork of antiquated lore and hard-won wisdom. He moved with meticulous care, spectacles perched on nose like judgment's perch. While dosing the child with honeyed tonics, his gaze snagged on Josiah hauling logs, gaunt as famine's victim, hands quaking like leaves in storm. Departing, he spied Isaiah's botched shuttermans, the vacant stare echoing Josiah's desolation. In the parlor's stifling air, Pemberton broached it. Mistress, an ailment plagues your men, wasting shakes, eyes hollow as graves. Epidemic, Cordelia's composure held. Malarial echoes from the swamps. Quinine and calomel my remedies. He nodded. Fever's rampant in these lowlands, but offered deeper probes. Unnecessary, she demurred. I command their cure. Yet unease gnawed. At Waynesboro's medical conclave, over Brandy's amber glow, he confided in Dr. Francis Calloway. Symptoms synchronized, yet isolated. No gum tinge from calomel. Odd, no? Calloway mused on tainted wells or rancid rations, but the anomaly lingered, a thorn in thought's flesh. June's heat baked the earth, amplifying Willowben's woes. Isaiah crumpled mid-gin repair, consciousness fleeing like a soul unbound, reviving disoriented, speech slurred, face sagging as if stroked by death's finger. Overseer Marcus Delqua relayed to Cordelia. She inspected, then quarantined. Drunken folly, water and crust till sense returns. Marcus knew falsehood. Isaiah abstained, no spirits reek. Days hence, Caleb buckled at forge, legs betraying, mutters incoherent as glossolalia. Same decree. Isolation, starvation veiled as cure. Terror rippled through quarters like plague. Strong men felled without fever. Poison? Sorcery? Elder Dinah, Congo-born healer with herbs whispering ancient wisdoms. Corner Josiah at dusk. Boy, speak, what devours you? Empty eyes met hers, a charm proffered. Roots, stones warding evil, slipped from limp fingers. Desperate, she petitioned Marcus. Mistress drains them at creek's edge, life leaching like blood. He scoffed, Fables for fools, spread them, feel the lash. Yet inwardly, seeds of doubt sprouted. Marcus, 35, Louisiana forged in overseer's brutality, observed with pragmatist sigh. Plantations thrived on order. This chaos threatened yields. Cordelia's dawns noted. Men's wane contrasted her bloom. Youth renewed, as if siphoning essence in demonic exchange. He shadowed paths, witnessing processions to creek, never nearing. Instinct screamed peril. Queries to servants unveiled. Charleston sealed epistles. Augusta's arcane procurements. Philadelphia's academy sojourn. Breeding ground for esoteric heresies? Accumulation tempted authority's ear, but evidence ethereal. Walks with slaves? Ailments unexplained? Law yawned indifferent to black suffering as long as cotton flowed. Unseen, another predator circled. In Charleston's humid labyrinths, Victor Kensington, 52, disgraced Philadelphia exile, awaited Cordelia's missive. License revoked for asylum atrocities, he peddled vital transfusion. Mesmerism's bastard child, blending bleedings, baths, chemicals, mind bends. Claimed rejuvenation's elixir, fleecing the desperate. Aging dames, dying magnates. Successes fabricated, patients vanished or perished. Cordelia's path crossed his in 1836 at a salon lecture on vital forces. Intrigued, she sought counsel in his specimen-jarred sanctum. Confession spilled. Thomas's deceit, sterility from youthful vice, children sired by proxies. Drug nights, she claimed, enslaved stand-ins selected for resemblance, ensuring Rutled facade. No proof ironclad, but suspicions festered. Features echoing field hands, crescents marking bastards. Kensington, sensing opportunity, wove her rage into ritual, transfusing tainted. Blood to purify lineage, a spiritual alchemy defying God's design. As rituals intensified, Cordelia's journals exalted. The essence yields, corruption expunged. In their marks, his sins, in my rights, redemption. But heaven stirred, omens brewing, storms unnatural, creek waters murmuring judgments. The trio's souls frayed, bodies vessels cracking under profane pressure. What vengeance would divine justice unleash upon this southern Jezebel? In the stifling veil of Burke County secrets, where the Savannah River's murmurs carried echoes of ancestral sins like whispers from the book of Genesis, Cordelia Rutled's obsession deepened into a spiritual abyss that threatened to swallow Willowben whole. Her revelations to Victor Kensington peeled back layers of matrimonial deception, exposing a wound festering with biblical echoes of deceit and retribution. Husbands as false idols, wives as vessels violated, blood as the currency of divine justice. What began as suspicion blossomed into a profane quest for reclamation, blending alchemical heresy with the South's rigid hierarchies, where flesh and spirit intertwined in a dance of damnation. As summer's heat baked the earth like a potter's kiln forging vessels of wrath, the plantation's facade cracked further, revealing a matriarch's descent into a ritualistic purgatory, where redemption twisted into revenge, and the innocent paid for the sins of the fathers. Cordelia's confessions to Kensington unraveled a tapestry of torment woven over 18 years of union. Her firstborn, Margaret, bore no stamp of Thomas's angular features. Instead, her soft contours and luminous eyes mirrored shadows among the enslaved, a haunting resemblance that gnawed at Cordelia like the serpent's temptation in Eden. Thomas Jr. followed, his skin a deeper hue than parental pallor, curls coiling with textures hinting at forbidden unions, a mark of mixed heritage that screamed silent accusations. Then, the crescents, those lunar scars etched on 3 of her offspring, identical to those on Isaiah, Caleb, and Josiah, all Willowben born in the shadowed years preceding her maternities. Were these sigils mere coincidence, or badges of bastardy, echoes of Ham's curse perpetuated in the New World? Cordelia's mind, isolated in the plantation's gilded cage, birthed delusions, or truths, from an unhappy marriage's barren soil. She convinced herself of Thomas's sterility, a venereal scourge from youthful indiscretions, concealed like David's sin with Bathsheba. Rather than confess, he orchestrated nocturnal violations, laudanum-laced dreams rendering her compliant, enslaved proxies summoned to her bed, men chosen for superficial likenesses, ensuring the Rutled lineage's illusion while desecrating her sanctity. Belief solidified into fanaticism, a psychological inferno where guilt inverted. Thomas the architect of humiliation, she the avenger seeking to reclaim stolen essence. Revenge burned, but deeper yearned a hunger for restoration. Youth siphoned back, vitality restored, power wrested from betrayal's grip. In Kensington's Church Street lair, amid jars of pickled anomalies glowing like forbidden fruits, she bared this soul wound. He, with confessor's poise honed from madmen's pleas, nodded. Such feats, he assured, lay within his grasp. Yet caveats loomed, arduous, protracted, veiled in utmost secrecy. His shadow couldn't grace Willowben. Scrutiny would unravel all. Instead, epistolary guidance, protocols penned, elixirs shipped, counsel exchanged. The toll? $5,000 in shadowed installments, plus sundry's cost. Cordelia assented without flinch, dipping into paternal inheritance hoarded like the widow's mite, her resolve steel-forged in resentment's furnace. Through 1836-1837 cycles, Kensington's missives arrived like ravens bearing omens, detailed decrees for her unholy work. Select triad subjects embodying the violators, physical matches, compliant vessels. Prime them subtly, compounds laced in meals, rendering minds malleable as clay in the potter's hand. Thomas's demise the catalyst, then, full immersion, daily creek baptisms inverted, bleedings as sacrificial offerings, tinctures smeared like anointing oils gone profane, incantations chanted to summon vital transference. Kensington's brew mingled science's veneer with occult shadows. Mesmer's magnetism, Hahnemann's dilutions, European grimoires whispers, crafting. A theatrical toxin. Mercury's insidious gleam, arsenic's whisper death, digitalis' heart-halting grip, alkaloids extracted from nightshade kin. Doses calibrated to erode, nerves like sin corrodes the soul, fostering illusions of essence drained. Psychology wove the web's core, dominance absolute, stripping agency through nudity's vulnerability, water's chill bite, razor's kiss, tongue's arcane evoking Babel's confusion. Helplessness bred, resistance crumbled, cognition frayed, while Cordelia, in self-deception's embrace, felt rejuvenated, as if absorbing their sparks like Elijah's mantle past. But Kensington's motives slithered deeper. Cordelia's reports fueled his clandestine ledger, a treatise on transfusion therapy. Ideal subject, captives voiceless, her intellect sharp, fanaticism fuel. Moral voids yawned. He viewed enslaved as Philadelphia's asylum fodder, expendable in progress's name. Unrevealed. A Burke County correspondent, shadows paying premiums for dispatches on her descent, plotting her downfall with Judas's precision. July 1838 scorched the lowlands like Sodom's brimstone. 90s by dawn, ere a humid shroud from river's breath. Fields shimmered emerald under sun's lash. Workers' sweat mingling with soil in rhythmic toil. Breaths ragged as prayers for relief. Manor dwellers sought shade's mercy. Siestas in dim chambers where fans stirred stagnant air like futile exorcisms. Cordelia's vigils persisted, amplified in fervor. Dosages escalated, sessions prolonged to hour-long ordeals, innovations added. Bitter draughts forced down throats, caustics blistering skin like hellfire's touch, fluids beyond blood harvested in vials glowing amber under lantern light. The trio teetered on oblivion's edge, visible to all, skin's jaundiced wax, movements spectral wisps. Isaiah, immobilized, stared vacant from cabin gloom. Caleb's collapses chained him to bed. Josiah alone trudged mechanically, eyes abyssal voids. Empathy stirred in quarters, dread for brothers fading, curiosity at mistress's thriving glow, as if she feasted on their waning moons. Overseer Marcus Delqua, pragmatist forged in Louisiana's cruelties, seized opportunity mid-July. Cordelia entertained Waynesboro guests, silks rustling, teacups clinking like false normalcy. He infiltrated her sanctum, floorboard pride with iron's bite, chest yielding treasures. Kensington's blueprints of poison, journals chronicling Creek atrocities with surgeon's detachment, Augusta receipts for death's ingredients. Damning pinnacle, unfinished epistle to Kensington, doubts scrawled, treatment's illusion, murder for madness's sake? Marcus pilfered keys, resealed the crypt, rode to Waynesboro's Howard Pritchard, attorney ambitious as Icarus, discreet as night. Pritchard's eyes widened over parchments. Not mere slave abuse, courts indifferent, but lunacy's proof, delusions rampant, paranoia biblical, mania homicidal. Leverage golden, declare Cordelia incompetent, guardian installed, Willowben's riches rerouted. Burke's elite salivated, Thomas's void invited claims, valuable acres ripe for seizure. Counsel caution, fortify with witnesses, let rot deepen, strike surgically, lest she incinerate evidence or flee to Charleston's harbors. Marcus acquiesced, demanding aid for the dying. Pritchard pledged Pemberton's probe, documentation as nails in her coffin. Unbeknownst, Cordelia detected intrusion. Board askew, scratch a telltale scar, letters disarrayed. Marcus fingered, his stares too probing. Oversight, assuming mistress's mantle shielded from white fraternity's bonds. Retaliation swift. Evening summons, dismissal decreed, wages tossed like Judas silver. Spread venom, and Charleston's web ensnares you. Career crucified. Marcus departed, booty saddled, straight to Pritchard's den. Case acceleration. Vacuum spawned chaos. Samuel Gentry elevated, Green in command. Workers probed weaknesses. Paces slackened, commands feigned deaf, sabotage subtle as serpent's guile. Cordelia clamped iron. Lashes proliferated for trifles. Portions paired to famine's edge. Curfews like Pharaoh's edicts. Assemblies banned under night's cloak. Willowben simmered, resentment boiling toward rebellion's brink, terror thick as fog. Isaiah's end came July 28th. Breath halted in nocturnal hush. Body surrendered to toxin's siege. Hasty grave and slave plot. No lament permitted. Ledger lied fever consumption. Cordelia, undeterred, amplified on survivors, as if death fueled her. A necromantic harvest. August dawned desperate. Margaret, soul-torn, pinned to Aunt Catherine Vance in Charleston. Details etched. Mother's eclipses, men's wither, Isaiah's demise. Evil's pall like Beelzebub's swarm. Zmagold via errand servant, missivisid. Catherine, social pillar widowed, recoiled, dispatched to Pemberton for assessment, to probate judge for estate scrutiny. Converging storms with Pritchard's plots, noose tightening unseen. Pemberton arrived August 20th, facade of family check. Children probed. Edmund Nervy, others hail. Demanded Caleb, Josiah. Cordelia balked, fevers mundane. Yielded under pressure. Caleb's hut reeked decay, emaciated frame, gums blue-gray mercury stamps, tremors neurological ruin, burns chemical stigmata. Josiah mirrored. Confrontation. What poisons administer you? Cordelia, fractured composure. European right for my vigor. Bats therapeutic, tinctures vital. Pemberton thundered. Murder, not medicine. Mercury, arsenic, digitalis lethal. Her retort glacial. My property, my prerogative. Violators of my sanctity, participants in Thomas's scheme, deserved fate. And it works. Strength surges, youth returns. Transference divine. Pemberton fled, reports fired to sheriff, court. Fused with Marcus's trove, case ironclad. September 3rd, Sheriff Benjamin Talmadge thundered in, writ brandished. Cordelia to physician's scrutiny for sanity. Guardian interim for Plantation. progeny. Divine scales tipping, retribution's hour nigh. As autumn whispered warnings through rustling leaves, Willowben's spirit stirred, ghosts of the wronged rising, biblical justice unfolding. Cordelia's hubris, echoing Eve's bite, invited fall. What redemption for a soul bartering blood for borrowed time? The creek's waters, once clear, now seemed stained eternal, a testament to sins unwashed. September 6, 1838. The Waynesboro courthouse smelled of sweat, tobacco, and old fear. Cordelia Vance Rutled walked in wearing mourning black that no longer fooled anyone. Her wrists were free, but every eye in the room bound her tighter than any rope. 3 physicians, Dr. Silas Pemberton among them, waited behind a scarred oak table like the judges of the last day. For 4 merciless hours they tore at her mind the way she had torn at flesh by the creek. They asked about Thomas's supposed conspiracy. They asked about Kensington's letters. They asked why she felt no sorrow for Isaiah Drummond rotting in the slave cemetery, or for Caleb and Josiah wasting away like candles burned at both ends. Cordelia answered with the calm of a woman who had already stepped off the edge of the world. "My children bear the crescent mark," she said, voice steady as winter ice. 3 of my children, 3 of the men I bled. That is not coincidence. That is proof. When they pressed her on the poisons, mercury, arsenic digitalis, she corrected their dosages with chilling precision, as if lecturing students. When they demanded remorse, she offered none. "I reclaimed what was taken from me," she whispered. "If the law calls that madness, then the law is blind." The verdict required less than 10 minutes. Severe delusional disorder. Incapacitated. Dangerous to herself and others. That same afternoon, the probate judge signed the order. Catherine Vance, Cordelia's sister-in-law from Charleston, was appointed guardian of the Rutled children and every acre, body, and bale that belonged to Willowben. Mid-September, Catherine arrived like an avenging angel in mourning silk. With her came stern house servants, a locksmith, and 2 physicians who had seen the worst yellow fever wards and still turned pale at what they found. Cordelia was moved to an upper bedroom. The door was fitted with an iron lock on the outside. The windows were nailed shut. The black leather book and every vial, razor, and stained cloth were carried out in a wheelbarrow and burned in the barnyard while the children watched from the veranda, silent as mourners at their mother's funeral. Catherine ordered the rituals ended forever. She summoned physicians for Caleb and Josiah. Dr. Pemberton only shook his head. "The mercury has done its work. Their minds are gone. Their bodies will follow." Cordelia accepted captivity with the serenity of a martyr who still believes the flames will not touch her. In the nights that followed, servants swore they heard her whispering through the locked door. Not pleas, but soft recitations in a language no one recognized, the same cadences that had once drifted across Turkey Creek at dawn. While Catherine secured the house, she began to dig. Private detectives descended on Charleston. They found Kensington's rooms emptied overnight. The landlord still owed 4 months' rent and muttering about that devil doctor. But behind a false panel in the wainscoting, they discovered the ledger that damned them all. Every letter from Cordelia, every report Kensington had sold, for $20 a page, to Howard Pritchard, the ambitious Waynesboro attorney. Pritchard had not been trying to save anyone. He had been feeding Cordelia's dissent, waiting for the perfect moment to have her declared insane and himself installed as guardian of one of the richest estates in Burke County. When Catherine laid the evidence before the probate court, the conspiracy collapsed like a house of cards built on graves. Pritchard was disbarred before the ink dried. He fled Georgia under cover of night, destination unknown, name cursed from Savannah to Augusta. Marcus Delqua, the overseer who had believed himself a whistleblower, learned he had merely been another pawn. He gave testimony, took his shame, and disappeared into the Carolina upcountry, never to oversee another soul. But the deepest cut came last. Catherine hired a discreet Charleston detective, former police, a man who had traced runaway slaves and forged wills, to answer the one question that still bled. Had Thomas Rutled truly orchestrated the nightmare Cordelia believed? Weeks of quiet investigation, ledgers, old servants too frightened to lie anymore, a midwife's deathbed confession, unveiled a truth more cruel than any midnight violation. Thomas had indeed been sterile, scarred by syphilis in his reckless youth. His first wife had never conceived in 8 childless years. But Thomas Rutled had not needed surrogates brought to his wife's bed. He had already fathered children on enslaved women at Willowben long before Cordelia ever arrived as a bride. Isaiah, Caleb, Josiah, his own blood, raised not as sons, but as valuable, skilled property, given literacy, tools, small privileges, all to increase their worth on the books, never to acknowledge their humanity. When Cordelia failed to conceive in the early years of marriage, Thomas had waged subtle war on her spirit. Hints that she was barren, prayers that God might yet bless her, tonics that were nothing but mint and molasses. Then, when pregnancies finally came, through whatever natural miracle, Thomas praised the Lord loudly and let Cordelia believe her womb had been opened by prayer. She had noticed the resemblances, the crescent birthmarks, the textures of hair, the slope of shoulders. She had been right that her children shared blood with the 3 men she bled. She had simply been wrong about the direction the blood had flowed. They were half-brothers, her children and her victims. Thomas had built his dynasty on rape, silence, and ledgers, never dreaming his clever, watchful wife would one day piece together fragments into a monstrous whole and punish the wrong people for the right crime. Caleb Tucker died on September 24, 1838. He slipped away at dusk, whispering a single word no one understood. Josiah Mercer lingered 8 more years, fed, clothed, and cared for by those who had once feared him, a man-shaped space where a mind had been. Cordelia was never tried for murder. In 1838 Georgia, the law did not recognize the killing of slaves as homicide, only as property damage, and Catherine Vance wanted the children shielded from further shame. In November, Cordelia was delivered in a closed carriage to the Georgia Lunatic Asylum in Milledgeville. She lived there quietly until 1852, dying at 57 of pneumonia, still writing in journals that were taken from her and burned each month by order of the superintendent. The children were carried to Charleston. Margaret married a kind Philadelphia doctor in 1842 and never set foot in Georgia again. Thomas Jr. sold Willowben in 1856 the day he turned 21, as if the land itself were poisoned. The younger ones grew up on half-truths and locked drawers. Victor Kensington vanished like smoke. Some said New Orleans, others Havana or Veracruz. Wherever he went, he took his lies and left the South littered with the husks of those who had believed him. Willowben itself burned in 1864 when Sherman's men put torch to the big house. The land was carved into small farms. The name faded until only the oldest black families remembered why certain bends of Turkey Creek were never fished, never washed in, never spoken of after dusk. In 1891, a farmer's plow struck a buried box. Bottles crusted with chemical ghosts, a rusted lancet, pages of handwriting bleached by 60 Georgia rains. He reburied it before supper and never told a soul except his wife on the night he died. In 1899, clearing Catherine Vance's estate, an attorney named Robert Dunor opened a cedar trunk and found Cordelia's last letter to her daughter Margaret, written from the asylum in 1846. He read it once. Then he fed it to the fire along with almost everything else. Years later, to one trusted colleague, he confessed what had chilled him most. She understood everything. The fraud, the half-truths, the murders. And after 14 years of reflection, she wrote that if she were released that very day and handed the same letters from Kensington, the same suspicions, the same power, she would walk back to that creek and finish what she started. Not because she was insane, because she still believed the blood was owed. The single page Dunor could not bring himself to burn. Cordelia's journal entry from March 10th, 1838, 3 days into the rituals, now lies in a locked drawer at the Georgia Historical Society, cataloged but never displayed. I had begun the treatments Dr. H prescribed. The subjects obeyed. On this 3rd morning, I felt something, A warmth beneath the cold. A stealing back. Whether it is medicine or only vengeance wearing medicine's mask, I no longer care. The doubt itself is the final chain Thomas forged for me. Tonight, I break it. I will believe until the last drop proves me right or damns me forever. Either way, I will no longer be helpless. Sarah Drummond, Isaiah's niece, born in the year of the terror, lived to 106. In 1941, in a small house in Augusta, she told her great-grandchildren one last time about the kind uncle who built beautiful things with his hands, who was called to the creek each dawn and came back less himself every day. She wept without shame. Some hurts, she said, don't die with the body. They just keep moving downstream. And Turkey Creek still flows, clear, cold, and quiet, through the same bend of cypress and root. On certain mornings when the mist hangs thick and the birds refuse to sing, old folks say the water looks darker there, just for a moment, as if something beneath the surface remembers the taste of iron and will never be clean again. This is the true epitaph of Willowben Plantation. Not a ghost story, not a legend, a mirror, a warning carved in blood and silence about what happens when grief is given absolute power, when truth is twisted just far enough to justify any atrocity, and when an entire society agrees that some lives are only raw material for other people's salvation or damnation. What do you carry when you leave this story? Was Cordelia a monster forged by betrayal, or a woman who saw the monster first in everyone else and finally became what she beheld? Could anyone have pulled her back from the water before the first cut was made? Or was the creek cursed long before she ever stepped in barefoot? Leave your thoughts below. Some sins, once spoken, lose their power. Others only grow heavier when shared. If these shadows moved you, subscribe to Liturgy of Fear, ring the bell, and pass this tale to someone who still believes history is clean. The water remembers, and some debts are paid across centuries, one drop at a time.